In this week's episode, we talk night running, headlamps versus flashlights, and seeing critters at night. Welcome everyone to episode 3 of Aravaipa Trail Talk. Today we're going to be talking all about night running, answering some of your questions, and I'm going to go over a few of my favorite headlamps and flashlights today. So let's get right into it. So with our night run series coming up here in Phoenix, temperatures are going to be rising and we're going to be switching to some night running. And it's actually one of my favorite things to do is run at night. A lot of people I think get scared of the dark, but I absolutely love it. It's kind of just a different atmosphere, a lot quieter, cooler out, and it's just really a different experience than, say, just running in the day. So I want to answer some of you guys' questions, and we'll kind of get to those next.
Tim Plummer asks on Facebook, what light do you suggest for night running?
All right, Tim, thanks for the question. So I would say in general, there's two different categories of lights that you're going to want to look at for night running. So you've got your headlamp, which is something obviously that goes on your head. People can also sometimes wear them around their waist. It gives a little bit less bounce, or a handheld flashlight. And there's many different models. And what works for you is kind of a little bit up to your preference. A lot of times I actually prefer a handheld flashlight. And that reason is because a lot of times, like rocks on the trail, they cast like kind of a shadow when you use your handheld flashlight, so you can kind of see the rocks a lot more. If you're just wearing a headlamp and you're shining down on the trail, it'll tend to wash out a lot of the rocks and you can't really see the definition of the trail quite as well. With that being said though, there's definitely a time and a place for a headlamp. I found whenever I'm doing races that require me to use trekking poles, so both hands are already in use, I'm forced to use a headlamp. And how I overcome the problem with the rocks is I try and get or use a brighter headlamp. So I would say starting out, if you're just getting into night running, we have something with about 200 lumens is usually going to get you through, most races. I would say if you're doing a 100-mile race and you're going overnight, you might want something a bit more powerful with, say, 300 lumens. And obviously, you'll probably need to switch out your batteries at some point in the night. And I'll go through some specific models at the end of the show today.
All right, question number 2 from Del Salt Smith, Aravaipa Racing team member from Facebook. What's the weirdest hallucination you've ever experienced when running through the night?
Thanks, Del, for the question. I would say that I don't know if I've really had too many hallucinations, but I've definitely kind of lost my mind out there, and kind of most famously for me has been at the Barkley marathons last year. I was out on Loop 4 and was going up this section of trail, and just kind of, it didn't make sense to me where I was. I thought the creek was supposed to be like right next to the trail, and in reality, what I was seeing out there is the creek was like way down below, like 200 feet below me, and I just couldn't comprehend like where the creek was, and just kind of losing my mind in general. So I've heard some crazy stories. Kind of one of the most famous ones was from Barkley, Andrew Thompson. We'll probably link we'll link his race report below this video. You've just really got to read this. He's talking about being on Loop 5 at Barkley and just absolutely losing his mind. He at some point forgets he's even in the race, and he's imagining walking down this row of houses looking for his friend's house, just like totally losing it. So I don't know. I hope maybe on my Loop 5 at Barkley next year we'll get some good stories out of that.
TJ Cuddy from Facebook asks, I found that my super bright 500 plus lumen headlight actually bothers some of the people around me because of the shadows it casts. Is there a sweet spot for headlamp flashlight brightness?
Wow, great question. First off, kudos to you for using a 500 lumen flashlight. That sounds awesome. And I would say, I mean, not to be selfish, but I would say really use what works best for you. If you feel like you want a 500 lumen flashlight, go for it. I don't, yeah. I would say, like, for me personally, I think that the brighter flashlight you have, the more it just creates an artificial daylight, which is a huge advantage for running at night. Um, I mean, with a dimly lit light, you can get by, you can stumble your way through the darkness, but I mean, you're really going to just be in a huge advantage. I have found that like races like Javelin 100, where you're actually going back and forth with people, I would try and be courteous there, just because you don't want to just straight up blind someone when you're passing by them, or even when you get into an aid station. A lot of times, I've always found like I forget that my headlamp is on, and like a volunteer's asking to fill my bottle, and I'm just shining it right in their face, and so it's definitely something to think about. But I would say that if you want to use that 500 lumen, I would go for it.
Dawn Gilpin on Facebook asks, one thing I've struggled with on night runs is the timing of meals. I'm usually a morning runner for night races. When and what I eat is always hard to figure out. What do I do about this?
So for races that actually start at night, for instance, our upcoming Insomniac night runs, I would say that you do kind of need to think about that. And in a typical ultra, I like to recommend the night before a race or just a typical race, eat something. I like to eat something about 12 hours before that's easily digestible. So something like potatoes and vegetables, or rice and vegetables, something that isn't going to be sitting in my stomach not digested the next morning. And so, kind of going along with that, I would say you want to eat a really good sized breakfast, and then something that's still easily digestible for lunch. But then be careful what you're kind of eating in the last few hours before the race. You don't want anything too heavy. Normally, you sleep all night and kind of have that time to digest your food and let that happen. And if you're starting a race on a Saturday night, you just don't have that time. When I ran UTMB this last summer, I made sure to kind of eat, something good for breakfast and then just a light snack for lunch.
Ryan Winfield on Facebook asks, what night race this summer would be the best one for a rookie to do his or her first 50K? Or should I make it a day race? I've only done Ragnar Trail so far.
For a first 50K this summer, Aravaipa offers plenty of options. There's also a bunch of races all over. If you're choosing a night race, I might recommend actually the Adrenaline night runs that we have coming up at McDowell Mountain Regional Park. McDowell is the home of the Javelin 100 and about 4 of our other events, and it's one of our most popular parks for people to run in. It has just some really nice trails, and the race is going to be held May 14th, so it's still kind of on the early end of the summer, and it still will probably cool down at night pretty well. Once we start getting into the later night runs, say Vertigo in July and Hypnosis in August, those might have been flip-flopped, but anyways, kind of those July-August races, a lot of times we don't see the low temperature dip below 90. So I would say that's probably better for more experienced runners, or just someone who's better in the heat. If you're looking for a 50K in the day this summer, I might recommend our Big Pine up in Flagstaff. The only trade-off with that is you will be up at elevation, up at 7,000 feet. As far as other tips for people that are looking for their first 50K and thinking about doing that at night, I would say probably just make sure you have a really good light and you kind of work on your nutrition ahead of time, just like Dawn had asked earlier.
Kimberly Miller on Facebook asks, does night running typically affect speed, and how do you manage that?
I would say that if you don't have a very good light, it's definitely going to affect your speed. If you have a really good headlamp, or even a headlamp and a handheld flashlight, so you can make sure you see all those rocks on that technical trail, I would say that you can definitely run fast at night, just as fast in the day. And kind of the one advantage about running at night is a lot of times, especially in a place like Arizona, you're going to see cooler temperatures. and you can actually make up some ground at night. I've sometimes found that in 100-mile races, after a hot day, I can actually run faster at night and make up ground.
Tony Roosh on Facebook asks, what is the best headlamp for various terrain?
For me personally, a lot of our Wednesday night group runs where we're running for just an hour at a time, sometimes just part of the run will be in the dark. I use like a black diamond spot headlamp, and I think the old model previous to this year was about 130 lumens, and they've just upped it to 200. And that headlamp seems perfect for kind of your go-to weekly runs. For something that's going through the entire night, say a race that starts at the night time or is a 100-miler that you're going to be running all night, I like to go with something a little more powerful, something like the Black Diamond Icon. So something like the Black Diamond Icon headlamp. That one I think is over 300 lumens. It also has an external battery pack that you can either it attaches behind your head, or you can actually put it in your pack so it's not as heavy. And I think that, another thing to consider is just the technicality of the trail. If you have a lot more rocks, you're going to want that little bit better headlamp, and sometimes even supplementing that with a handheld.
Michelle Franson Smith on Facebook asks, my friend runs like a drunken monkey at night due to balance issues stemming from inner ear damage. Any thoughts on how to steady her and avoid falls? Holes, better lighting, practice. She does fine when she can see.
Well, I don't have experience with inner ear damage or balance, but I would say that I think all of those are really great suggestions, the three things you just mentioned right there. First off, I would say get literally the brightest light you can. And because if she does fine in the day and you can kind of create that artificial daylight at night, I think she'll have the best chance she can at, moving along safely through the trails. Utilizing some sort of trekking pole is also a great idea. I know, when I'm tired out on the trails, that's little extra support definitely helps out. And then just practice and trying, kind of experimenting and seeing what works for her.
TJ Cuddy on Facebook asks, aren't there more critter encounters at night? Golly, it's scary out there in the wilds. I can't imagine going out there and being mauled by a jackalope or chupacabra.
I think, number one, I think our fears are magnified in the dark because we just can't see beyond, with a headlamp, it might be, 50 yards without a light, just between here and our hand. We just don't know what's beyond it. But in reality, I think that there's definitely wildlife in general is sometimes more active at night. But I think also our imaginations can run a little bit wild. We will have some really good stories for you in our next episode of Trail Talk. We're going to be talking to one runner who attempted a double Crown King, and he has some wild stories of wildlife encounters. So, take everything I just said with a grain of salt because I think he was pretty scared out there. Thanks to all of you who submitted questions this week. Be sure to submit your questions at any time using the hashtag AskTrail, and you can submit those via Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. We tend to ask every week on our Aravaipa group trail run page what our topic is and what kind of questions we're looking for, and we'll be sure to get you guys on the show. So before we end today's show, I want to talk a little bit about some of the different options that I use, and then also we're going to be answering a couple more general questions that we received this last week. So starting off, want to talk about the actual flashlight that I've been using for about the last 4 years. So this one right here is called the UltraFire. The specific one is WF-501B, and this is a super bright flashlight. I don't even know what the lumens is, but it's probably in excess of 500 or 600. It has one of the most advanced LEDs on the market, and they always keep improving these. You can actually pick these up on Amazon now, and they're actually quite affordable. I think something like this maybe run like $20 or $30. It comes with this rechargeable battery right here, so you can just charge this up, have several ready to go at night. The only caution I would have on these is a lot of these are just made overseas, and it's not made by one of the big like flashlight headlamp manufacturers, say like a Black Diamond or a Petzl. So sometimes something can come a little bit loose. You want to make sure you kind of like have general maintenance and tighten these up before you go out on the trail. I think I get about maybe 6 hours on the high setting here. So this is kind of my go-to handheld flashlight. Now moving along to, I was talking about the Spot headlamp from Black Diamond. And this is their last year's model. This is the 130 lumens light, and they've got several modes on this. You can tap it and actually will dim and get brighter as you go. It also has a red light on it as well, which I haven't really found too much use for, but it does have that. So this year they've actually upgraded the model. It's a little bit of a sleeker design, and it also now has 200 lumens, which is really great. So more compact, and it's going to give you that little bit of extra light. So I would definitely recommend for anyone that's doing our Insomniac night runs this summer. We actually have a really great special on these headlamps. If you sign up for one of the races, you can pick up this lamp. Normally it's $39.95. You can pick it up for $30 plus tax. So check those out at any of our events. Now, a race like Barkley or UTMB or Hard Rock, when I am running with poles, I can't really carry this handheld light. It just doesn't work out too well. So I like to use, this one's the Black Diamond Icon, and it has this kind of external battery pack. So you open it up and put your batteries just right in there. This one right here is the model where it's just on the back of your head. And they also make a secondary model where you can actually just put this part in your pack, and it has a bit of a longer cord. This one doesn't have batteries in right now, but it's got multiple LEDs on the front, and it's probably, in comparison, like almost as bright as this handheld flashlight, which I love. So again, here there's some of these multiple color options for the Spot headlamps, which you guys can pick up any of our night runs this summer. So yeah, those are a couple of the lights that I prefer to use. So yeah, if you guys have any recommendations, feel free to comment on this video and share what's working for you.
Deborah Bliss Hamberlin on Facebook asks, I'm running Leadville for the first time this year. Do you recommend using trekking poles?
Thanks for the question, Deb. So I would definitely recommend using trekking poles for the Double Hope Pass section, which for those of you who don't know about the Leadville 100, high altitude race up in Leadville, Colorado, in the Rocky Mountains. Honestly, the first 40 miles is so runnable and quite a bit on roads and dirt roads and trails. I really don't think you need them. But the trek up and over Hope Pass, it's steep. You're getting up over 12,600 feet, especially the backside towards Winfield, very, very steep, loose trail. And I think trekking poles would be a really wise decision to pick up at Twin Lakes, and then you can drop them back off with your crew. So,
Roberto Miguel on Facebook asks, any recommended diet for runners or recommended beer?
Recommended diets. I think that's really a lot of it is a personal choice to you. I mean, overarching, I would say kind of like natural whole foods would be the best way to go for runners. I mean, you're trying to pursue a healthy activity here, and I think supporting that with wholesome foods, whatever you choose, if you're choose to eat meat or not, but still including lots of vegetables and fruits. Something I would watch out for, especially the night before a race, is just to eat something that's easily digestible, and not try anything new right before a race. Recommended beers, if you are a beer drinker. I mean, personally, I'm a double IPA kind of guy. There's a great one from Cartel here in Phoenix area that I would definitely recommend. So I don't know. So again, thank you guys for tuning in to our third episode. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next show. And be sure to ask your questions. We want to hear from you guys, and use that hashtag AskTrail. We'll see you next time.